What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. As always, this video is brought to you by NutriBio Supplements, Crystals, Bikinis, and Bio Longevity Labs. I am going to be doing a Q&A episode. It's been a little bit since I've done one of these. One of the questions that I got from a friend of the show, Malik, asked when the off-season Project Super Heavy series is going to begin. And I will probably record that tomorrow or Thursday. I have another check in with my coach, Justin Compton, tomorrow. And so I wanted to give it a little bit to get into the swing of the off season so that I had more to share with you guys. So at that point, I'll have a couple check ins. I will have the training split that I've settled into, probably a couple diet adjustments at that point. I wanted to get labs done at the end of the cruise. I wanted to have that for the video. And then also, I recently sent off some of the PEDs that I'm going to be using or that I am using to be lab tested. And I was waiting on the results for that. So, not as many people watch those videos as the podcast or the Q&As, but if you're interested, I'm going to be documenting my entire off season the same way that I documented the immediate post show rebound. So stay tuned for that. A couple of people also commented that they would like to see training videos on the channel, full day of eating videos. All of that will be included in the off-season series. These are mostly meant to be informational or valuable to people that are listening, as opposed to just self-serving and reflective of my own process. So for the Q&A, this is a good one. So let me click on this actually, because people can write in longer questions and then put them as screenshots on Instagram. I am Jay Perch on Instagram. That's where I would take these questions. So somebody wrote in and said, based on your comment about coaches last night on the podcast, what coaches have you worked with and what lessons did you take from each? Good question. So first ever coach was Christian Coronado, and he really taught me structure for bodybuilding. My next coach was a local New Jersey guy. His name was Pat Greco, and he was the first guy that got me in real contest conditioning. I had no muscle left at the end of the process, but he taught me what it was to work hard and override how you feel and do what is required regardless of how you feel. I learned that from my time with Pat. I also learned that I also learned what too far is, which has carried over to me coaching other athletes. And I also learned that you can take it too far and that it's not very difficult just to get someone in shape. You can throw drugs, cardio, and a calorie deficit at someone, and eventually you can will them into shape. So, if nothing else, I learned that there should be a more thoughtful approach to it. I worked with Chris Tuttle. Chris taught me many things. Many of the lessons that I've taken from Chris have been from afar or since our time working together. But he taught me the importance of the interpersonal relationship that you have with the client or with the athlete that you're working with. I worked with John Jewett for a long time, and he taught me to be a critical thinker for myself in the athlete's chair. So from him, I learned to always want to understand why instead of just being the workhorse that blindly follows. to some degree, that's a good trait, but also being a critical thinker is a big part of being a good athlete, I think. And especially if you want to coach people or if you are coaching people, it doesn't necessarily mean that you pester your coach with questions, but you take what they are doing and self analyze it and learn to understand the why based on your context. So I learned that from John. I learned many, many things from John. But in terms of him coaching me and less from like a mentor or real life perspective, just in terms of him being my bodybuilding coach, that's something I took from him. I worked with Phil Viz and I learned to think outside of the box with Phil. Phil is definitely a unorthodox thinker, and oftentimes he takes an approach that goes against conventional wisdom, which sometimes is a really good thing, sometimes not. But if nothing else, I took from him the value in thinking outside of the box. So I got Christian, Pat, Chris, John, Phil. I worked with Justin Harris. And if nothing else, he taught me and showed me the process to get open bodybuilding big and what was truly required. No one had ever really showed me or talked to me about it. And then my current coach, Justin Compton, is the final coach that I've worked with. And there has been so much that I've taken from him. I would say John, Chris, and Justin Compton are the three that provided me with the most value in and out of bodybuilding. But in terms of bodybuilding and just from what I've taken from Justin being my coach, one of the best things that I've taken from him is how to pace a contest prep, where I talked about earlier how you can just throw everything at an athlete and will them into shape. Justin really taught me through experience how to pace a contest prep and that it needs to go at a certain cadence and that there are certain signs based on what is happening with the athlete and how much time is left that certain things need to happen. So that's one of them. He taught me there's so much that I've taken from Justin Compton specifically. He really showed me how not only to maximize a post-show rebound, but do so both from an athlete and coaching perspective, so I can help other people do that, and how to pace and time that as well. So those are two big ones, just in terms of the X's and O's of bodybuilding. Do you have any quirky or unique rituals or habits that you have in the gym? I thought about this for a bit. I really don't. I wish there was something that I could give you. I have a pretty straightforward process. The only thing that I can think of that everyone else doesn't already do is that I wear over the ear headphones, like a big pair of Beats like these, or I have another pair that I wear in the gym that cover my whole ear. But then under that, I wear earplugs, and that just allows me to feel more in my own world. The headphones themselves are already noise canceling, but I really tune everything out by having the earplugs in. And then I guess there's also a secondary benefit of them protecting my ears because I can play my music pretty loud and it wouldn't cause the same damage to my ears, I guess. At what doses for tests do you or your clients generally start to see their blood work get skewed? Man, there's so much that goes into this. This is, and the guy that asked this is someone that I talked to. I know that he watches the videos. I'm grateful for that. I'm grateful for the question, and he knows that I like him, and I give him advice whenever I can. But this is not a great way of thinking about things in general. And it honestly, if I'm being blunt about it, it sounds like he's looking for a reason to not have to go get labs. And that might not be the case, but I'm just telling you, there's way more that goes into needing to get labs or the potential for your labs to be skewed than just what your testosterone dose is. I mean, we could talk about total dosage, we could talk about prior history, we could talk about what health supplements you are or are not taking, prophylactic drugs that you are or are not taking, prior health history, whether you use recreational drugs in the past. There's so many different things that go into it. There are guys that run 140 milligrams of testosterone for TRT, and that would skew their labs. Or, for example, they can only run 140 milligrams of test for TRT because anything more than that would skew their labs. And then because of that, that is someone that I would use almost a safer use model with, where maybe I fill the rest of their milligram total with a DHT. On the flip side of it, I have run 2.5 or 3 gram cycles, and my labs on that cycle look great. I shouldn't say three. I'm just reaching 3 grams now, but I've been on 2.6, 2.7 grams, and labs look great. So this is just not the right way to think about it. Over the years, what are your top 10 gyms that you've ever trained at? I don't know that I'll come up with 10, but I'll give you a list of awesome gyms and I'll try and go geographically and give you some different gyms based on different areas that I've been to. So I'm born and raised in New Jersey. And so destination gyms in terms of like, man, I just want to go and it's a must visit would be Bev's gym in Syosset, of course. In New Jersey, there's a bunch of really good gyms now. A couple of them are up in North Jersey. They are Strong and Shapely Gym. I think that's East Rutherford. Signature Fitness is incredible. And I forget, that might be Wayne. Forgive me if I don't have that right, but somewhere in North Jersey. And if we're talking about strictly equipment, like the gym is closed and empty and I get to just go in and train by myself, I would say Iron Revolution and Howl. However, the clientele and the people that make up the environment at that gym are less than desirable for someone like me. I like the Pump House that's down in Myrtle Beach, or I should say up in Myrtle Beach. The gym that we went to the most when I was in Germany, we were in Cologne for FIBO, and we went to a gym called Craft Station, I believe, and that was really good. Some crazy old school equipment that you just will never see anywhere else. Vegas, the last time that I was in Vegas and my times going to the Olympia were all before a lot of these new age bodybuilding gyms were built. But I like the old school LVAC, the one that Jay Cutler's in a lot of his videos. It's very it like the ambiance and everything feels very health club, but if you know equipment, it is loaded with killer equipment. I forget what there's another gym in Vegas that I really liked, and I can't think of it. Texas, I haven't been to any of the big name gyms like in the Dallas area. I'm sure Destination is often awesome. I haven't been. Um, Let's see. Florida. MI40 is worth going to if you're down here because the collection of equipment is really cool. And there's a good chance that you'll run into somebody that you look up to or are a fan of, but not the best environment to train in, just for me at least, just what I like. The gym that I train in now is truly the best gym that I've ever been in terms of equipment, in terms of environment, all of it. That is Counterculture Gym in St. Pete area of Florida. I'm drawing a blank the gym that I went to as my home gym um, when I lived in Texas. Oh, the Muscle Factory gym. So there's two actually that come to mind now that I think about it. There's a Muscle Factory in Arizona that's fantastic, killer gym, and then the Muscle Factory in San Antonio is awesome as well. And then last but not least, Pivot Gym, Mineola, Long Island. Gotta get there. Are guys too afraid of off season pushing in general regarding food and body comp? So this is a slippery slope to answer this question because if I say yes, yeah, guys are too afraid, let it rip, then a lot of people will take that as a message to just eat everything in sight. So I'll answer this from a coaching perspective. I think coaches should not hesitate to allow their most adherent and consistent clients get a little soft in the pursuit of size, especially if that person has already shown that they can get in shape. In that case, you've worked with someone for a long time. They've already shown that they get super stage peeled and they need especially if they need a lot of size or they want to, max out a weight class or jump a weight class. They competed at 190 and next year they want to compete at 220, something like that. Yeah, let it rip. I wouldn't hesitate to let somebody get a little bit soft as long as training performance is at all-time highs and digestion is good. If you're disgusted by your food and force feeding and farting nonstop and you can't hold your stomach in an effort to get all that food in, and then because of that you're so distended and disgusted with yourself that your training suffers, none of that's good. None of that leads to new muscle tissue. But if most aspects are on the up and up and your off-season journey to following the plan and getting all the food in and training your ass off leads you to being a little bit softer than maybe you've ever been before, I think especially when you have a coach guiding it, it's probably going to result in you being bigger than ever on stage. So it's a two-way street. It's kind of a double-edged sword to answer this question. I think if you're coaching yourself, if you're not someone that gets crazy peeled for shows relatively easy compared to some of your counterparts, and if you're not someone that is super adherent in the off season, all of these are reasons not to let it go too far in terms of composition. If your total anabolic load is 2.5 grams for the off season, how would you construct it? There's a million ways that you can do it. I guess he's asking how I would do it or, looking for general recommendations. Let's just assume that this is someone that doesn't have obvious red flags for certain drugs. And just based on what the current climate is with what's available and what's real and all that, I would say somewhere in the 1,000 to 1,200 range for test. That's going to be the leading driver of your cycle. So let's say 1,200 test, 800 nandrolone, and 500 EQ, something like that. I think that puts us at 2.5. And then, of course, GH and insulin. But if you're asking strictly about the gear, it would be mostly test, or test is the driver, and then however you want to divvy up. Nandrolone, personally, I like DECA for the off season, and EQ. It depends, I guess. Then from there, how well you handle nandrolone, how much of an E2 modulation effect that you get from EQ, and how much you aromatize from that large test dose. I know more is more, but if progressing with less, would you still increase the dosage? So on the videos and on the podcasts and stuff, and especially with myself, I'm at a point right now where I'm experimenting, and I've used more recently than I ever have before, and that has worked for me. More is more, but and I also am trying to convey an honest message to you guys. It just, for me, I listen to all things bodybuilding. Bodybuilding is my life. And I am just constantly hearing people talk about these doses that just don't seem to line up with what I hear behind the scenes or in personal conversations or when I talk to other coaches. So I try to be just upfront and honest with you guys. And it often comes off as being blunt. And I've had comments from people that say that I'm reckless with the way that I talk about drugs. If that's how you feel, that's fine. I don't give a fuck. But in general, I'm not just blindly pushing drugs for myself or for, especially for clients. I'm way more, I don't want to say conservative, but I'm way more thoughtful about my clients than I am about myself. So, if I had a client that is on, like, say, a moderate dose, let's say we have a long off season ahead of us, right? No timetable on it. You're in a pretty good spot, body fat wise. And so the idea is we're going to make periodic increases to the dose. We're not just going peak dosage from week one and leaving it the whole time, right? Like, we're going to start somewhere X number of weeks in, we're going to add to it. X number of weeks in, we're going to add to it. So if you're in a spot like that where from food, from training, and from where the current amount of PEDs lies, all signs are positive. Body composition is still really good as body weight goes up. Appetite is good. Training performance is through the roof. Pumps feel crazy. Everything's good. Sleep is good. No, you don't just slap more drugs on it for no reason. It should be thoughtful. Yes, more is more, but it's not just a blind variable that you change for no reason. You want there to be a reason for more drugs. Training has stalled, or you've reached a point with your volume or training in general that you feel like recovery is a little bit down. Maybe you're happy with the current surplus, but from the weight that is being gained, composition has started to slide a little bit. That's a good time to add more gear so that the weight sticks, so to speak, and it looks better as it sticks. But no, I don't think you should just dump more on it, because if things are working, then leave it. Leave it until you have a reason to increase it. For off season, do you like longer, more intense cardio but more food versus low cardio but less food? This is not really how I think about cardio in general. For someone in the off season, I don't, I shouldn't say I don't, but I very rarely change the cardio as a variable. The food is going to change probably pretty often or somewhat often. Drugs may change. Training may even change. I'm really not changing the cardio unless there's a big shift in what the goal is or what the timeline is or something like that. It's just going to be a constant variable. And then also for off season, this guy asks longer and more intense or short but less intense. I don't think about it in those. I think about it the opposite. If anything, there are times for off season that I have guys do short duration, high intensity cardio, like 10 to 12 minutes of intervals on the stairs or on an elliptical, something that's really going to jack your heart rate up. That is done for heart health and also for metabolic capacity, meaning it allows you to train harder in higher rep ranges or with more volume. And your your heart and your lungs are not the reason that the training needed to stop. But no, for me, I would just set a baseline of cardio. And, if you're talking about a driver for appetite or a driver for more food, that should be your training. Your training should be driving the demand for calories. You're limited to only using D-ball, clen, trenbolone, and test for prep. How and when would you use it? All right. So I would probably start with test and D-ball and use cardio, use the diet to make a good initial pass at the body fat. Somewhere like 8 to 12 weeks out, I would bring clen in to that. I would leave the D-ball in probably until like 6 weeks out. I would take the D-ball out. I would put the tren in at 6 weeks out. Probably bring clen up again, start to really push for conditioning. I would probably use clen all the way through up until maybe like the Monday before a Saturday show, depending on how the person looks and what their propensity is for holding water, how muscular that person is. At this point, because we don't have many tools to use, I may pull the test out at 2 weeks out, something like that, and just run tren and clen leading into the show. That would give you a pretty dry, nutty look, depending on your response. It's interesting. I will say in a real life application, I would never do D-ball during a prep. There's just way too much water. It's D-ball is basically, I don't want to throw out like a blanket statement at it, but D-ball is basically like oral testosterone that just brings tons of water and affinity to aromatize with it. So if anything, if we're using like an oral to preserve fullness or training performance, it would be anadrol prep. And then for some people, it happens to taper down their appetite. And in contest prep, that's okay. We're not upset about that. Are off-season orals a thing of the past? I think from what I see and hear, compared to the way that it used to be, it definitely is something that's viewed as old school or probably outdated. I think there's a time and a place for basically everything. And I think there are definitely ways to utilize orals in the off season that so that they don't wreck your appetite or lower back, so that they help you with a sticking point, whether it's with training or body weight or both. In general, it does seem like it's a thing of the past, but I can also point out times and instances where they might be useful. Are there any circumstances that you don't like EQ? Yeah, I mean, for sure. I mean, contest prep, can EQ be substituted in for DHT drugs if you can't get them? Yes. Do I still prefer DHT drugs for the cosmetic effect in contest prep? Definitely. EQ is not a first choice from inside of 8 weeks from a contest. Can you do it? Yeah, of course, but it's not a first choice. And then like off season wise, when do I not like it? There are some guys that run 200 milligrams of EQ and their hematocrit goes to 57 and their hemoglobin is 19 and their blood pressure is 145 over 100. That's someone that just shouldn't run it, that just can't run it. I think, like we were just talking about before, if you're at a point that you are considering an off-season oral, depending on what it is, if you're on EQ, that might not be the best time for it or a great idea. Because even if you originally don't get that blood thickening response or blood pressure elevation response from EQ, adding one of these off-season type orals on top of it is going to do that. I can almost say, I could say with near certainty that that combination will do that. So yeah, there are times. I mean, I basically never say never, and I rarely say always, right? How do you view and what importance do you place on HDL as an overall indicator? And that was the end of it. So I guess maybe indicator of overall health or likelihood of a cardiac event. I'm not a doctor, guys, but from my understanding and just from what I see in real life, if you take gear, your HDL is going to come down. Basically, every time I've ever gotten labs done, my HDL is lower than the reference range. Now, if you are in single digits for HDL over a long period of time, that is going to be a bad thing. But in general, I can remember seeing where the reduction, or sorry, the increase of HDL is not a one-to-one guarantee that it is going to result in positive health outcomes. So, how great of an indicator is it? I don't think it's great. It seems like the ratio of HDL to LDL is more important, and I think in general LDL is the more important number. Um, Broken down even further, I think the ApoB, like apolipoprotein B, is a, the best indicator of possible cardiac events. And then I guess ApoA is basically like the HDL equivalent of that. I just got my labs done. I'm going to talk about it when I do the super heavy series. LDL is awesome, and my ApoB is awesome, but my HDL is not great, and my ApoA was not great. So I don't put a huge significance on it. I just for the first time added a flushing immediate or immediate flushing niacin product in an attempt to kind of bring that back up, but it's not an end all be all. Favorite most significant cycle that you have run during your career? So that would have been last off season. I did a gram of test. I did 800 DECA, 800 EQ. And for the first month, I did 15 IUs of GH. And then the carpal tunnel became unbearable. And I was never able to settle on a dose that was beneficial for bodybuilding. I think I took it out for quite a while. And then I tried to come back and do 6 IUs, couldn't tolerate it. or I came back. I tried to do 8 IUs, couldn't tolerate it. I tried 6, couldn't tolerate it. Pulled it out completely again. I think I did maybe the final month of off season with 4 IUs of GH just to have some in, but that was the most significant up to this point. Right now, I am in the midst of what will be the most significant and productive cycle that I've ever done. A little bit of a spoiler for the Project Super Heavy series, but on paper, I had started with basically 1,500 tests, 900 nandrolone as DECA, 600 EQ, and as an average, it's 11.5 IUs of GH. I'm taking different amounts based on what day it is, but on an average, that's what it comes out to for the week. And I just got lab reports back from the products that I was using, and the test was slightly underdosed. I thought it was a 300 milligram per ml bottle. That's what it was labeled as. And it only came back at about 250 mgs. So really, I was running about 1,200 mgs of tests. I'm only a couple weeks in, so I can't comment on what all that is doing or what it's going to yield or has yielded, but that will be the most that I've done. So I've pretty much settled. People will ask, so GH wise, Monday, Wednesday, Friday are all priority training days in terms of what I'm training those days. Those days, I take 13 IUs of GH before bed. The rest of the week, I take 10 IUs. So on average, it comes out to like 11.5. If I run into any type of issues at all pertaining to the GH side effects, I will try to just go back down to 10 per day, and I would be happy to leave that. That would be fine. Um, Man, I don't want to spoil too much, but I'm also to kind of start the cycle. Somebody asked, are off-season orals a thing in the past? I'm taking 25 milligrams of Anadrol. I'm taking that before bed. And so far, so good because that has prevented any appetite issues. And then with my pre-workout meal on training days only, I'm taking 25 milligrams of Anavar as well. And, like I said, I'm not far into this, but my pumps and my training have been insane. And I commented to a couple of people that both in terms of how I look and how everything feels, the fullness, the tightness of the skin is the feeling that I felt like I was missing during my post-show rebound that I've had years past. So something's working. We'll see. We'll see how it goes. We'll see how significant the cycle ends up being. I think I probably will start to add to the testosterone to get it back up near that 1,500 number that I had planned on doing. And another note, like I had talked about before, maybe someone titrating a cycle up and adding to it along the way. After speaking with Justin, we decided that I am just going to go right into what, this is my peak dose. This is the highest cycle that I've ever run. And we're just starting with it week one and letting it rip. So that's everything. I think that's where I'm going to leave it for now. I gotta go eat. But thanks everybody that watched the podcast last night. Thanks to everybody that wrote in questions. Keep your eyes peeled if you're interested in the off-season super heavyweight episode or series that will be coming out later this week as well. And until next time, guys, I am out.